So we have a couple more tendencies to discuss. And one is the tendency humans have for communication. Let's go back to those early humans. Let's think about their needs that they had to fulfill for survival. In order to do that, they had to communicate with one another. They had to be able to say, don't go there, it's not safe, or, we need more food, whose turn is it to go out and get some? Whatever sort of need they had to fulfill, they had to communicate with one another. In fact, some have thought that perhaps even the fact that they had young, helpless children required them to develop communication as well. They had to rely on one another. So humans have had a tendency to communicate. We aren't exactly sure how language and communication developed in early humans because it was all oral communication, spoken communication. But we know that humans have communicated and continue to communicate. We can see this tendency for communication so strongly in young children. When you see a baby communicating their, fundamental needs, they're uncomfortable, they're hungry, they do that through crying quite often or fussing in some way. But they start to develop the ability to use other ways of communication. They start to recognize the difference in human words versus noises. So at around 6 months, when someone is talking to a baby, the baby's vocal cords will actually start to vibrate. They know, they're starting to recognize the importance of that language as a communication tool. So we see young children develop language, they're just soaking it in, and they want to be able to express themselves. And we see their drive to do that. Now, in the elementary, they've acquired a lot of their language. They have a lot of vocabulary and ability to express themselves, and they really want to communicate. We know they want to work in groups. So guess what that means? This tendency for communication is really firing in elementary children. We have to be sure in the elementary classroom, we're providing them ample opportunity for communication, argument, debate, laughter, comedy, deep discussion on, an important topic. All of this kind of communication takes place in elementary classrooms, and we provide the children the freedom to explore that kind of communication and support for learning skills in communication, how to listen, how to respond. Now, closely connected to this tendency for communication is a human tendency to associate with others, to group together. We can see how that collaboration was beneficial for early humans, that they could meet their needs together rather than trying to meet a need individually, which is harder to do. And we see it in young children, their desire to understand their family life and their classroom life, that desire to be together in groups, in social groups. And of course, we see this tendency in elementary children. They're driven to be in groups, to figure out social situations. And so we support this in the elementary. We offer them lots of guidance and support for being able to work together, to associate with one another. As adults with all these tendencies, we should be watching for them in our observations of children. All children should display all the different tendencies at different times. We're not going to necessarily see every single one happening all the time in every child, but we should see them emerging in all children. If we don't see certain tendencies, we have to start looking at what obstacles are getting in the way. What obstacle can we remove so that children's natural tendencies can flourish and therefore their self-construction is optimally supported? So those are things we have to consider as we're looking at and watching the children in our care. We have to watch for these tendencies in the children, be sure we're supporting them as optimally as we can and removing any obstacles that are getting in the way of the children developing.